Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cyber Sensei, the definitive podcast for cybersecurity educators brought to you by Cyberbit. I'm Sharon, I'm the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Cyberbit. Welcome back to all of you. And hi again, Adam. Nice to meet you again. Long time, actually. It's been
Yeah,
quite
great
a
to see
few
you,
weeks.
Lindstrom.
Yeah, and we've got a very unique team here from Lone Star College, Lone Star College. So hello, Dalia, Greg, and Chris. Very nice to have you here. We'll introduce you more formally in just a minute. And a few reminders and housekeeping for the audience here. We are currently live. This is a live podcast. We will be opening up for questions in about 30 minutes. So all you need to do is raise your hand and we will unmute you. And we'd really love you to present some questions live. If you sometimes our audience is a bit shy and you like to type in your questions, we really want you to speak up. So if anyone wants to ask the questions live, we'd love that. Or you can just type in your questions in the Q&A section anytime during this session, and we will address them during the Q&A. The session is recorded. It will be available on the leading podcast platforms and on our YouTube page with video after the session. And all the updates will be published on our LinkedIn profile. So make sure you follow Cyberbit on LinkedIn to keep receiving updates. So let's go ahead and start. Adam, would you like to present the team?
Thanks, Sharon. We work hard to capture industry leaders, those from academia, education, to try and provide insights and lessons to those of you who are running, building, designing cybersecurity training programs. And we started this program based on a lot of the needs that I had, where I was looking, where can I go to find leading practices real time and talk to people that are designing and building state-of-the-art cybersecurity education programs. And today we're joined by three leaders. And I start with Dr. Dalia Sherif. Dr. Sherif here is an accomplished scholar, PhD in organizational industrial psychology. She's got her MBA at Edinburgh. She's been a leader to help, I think, quadruple the size of several of the programs that she started there and has built with both the University of Houston and downtown, as well as the Lone Star College. But, I'll pause because it is worth going to the Cyberbit podcast link website and doing a search and seeing her accomplishments. But the three things that really struck out for her is she was successful in academia, she was successful in business, and successful as a leader building these kind of programs. And we thought her insights would be valuable to this team. Then we have Greg Lindstrom. Lots of things you can read about Greg there, but three quick things. Very successful as an industry leader, successful in serving our government, and he is an accomplished jiu-jitsu competitive fighter. So be nice to Greg today. But in all seriousness, the third thing is you'll learn about Greg is what a phenomenally passionate leader he is about developing himself and developing others to be the best Greg Lindstrom he can be. It's really impressive. And Chris Wolski here. Chris has joined Lone Star College. He is an associate professor at Lone Star. And he also comes with deep domain expertise in the industry, everything from hands-on to a CISO to a consultant. And so he is also putting what he's learned into practice. In this case, what he's learned in industry and bringing that to Lone Star as one of the full-time professors. But as Greg and Dalia will talk about, they're adjunct programs. So I'm really honored to have the three of you here today. We're keen to learn from you. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Dalia, I'm going to start off with you. If you could set the context, what you have done there, and please, this is no time for humble bragging. What you guys have done is incredible to grow your program and to attract troublemakers. Leaders like Greg and Chris to your campus. Dalia, could you kind of paint the scene of what you've done there and the size and scope of your program?
And thank you so much. I don't know, I'm not sure if we deserve all the praise, but thank you so much for the introduction. So you hear me okay, right?
Yeah, good. Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, well, let me tell you that we launched the cybersecurity program here at Lone Star in the midst of the pandemic. And then the pandemic was not even enough. So we had the historic freeze. So, and we had just one faculty, and that person was the curriculum team. And so when people invite him to the curriculum team, they're like, are we waiting on the rest of the team? He's like, no, it's only me. And not because we were not trying to hire more, not because we didn't have the budget, but because it's so hard to find industry experts in cybersecurity who are willing to teach. And I think Chris can tell us more about that. But these are some of the hardships we faced. Recruiting students was hard. Again, because there was no FaceTime with the students to tell them what they can accomplish if they get this degree, finding experts, finding labs, because we went online through the pandemic and a year after. And so trying to shift from their physical lab to online lab, that was really, really hard. And trying to come up with a budget to provide hyper reality labs like Cyberbit, that was another hurdle. And then employability. So you're talking about a community college offering a bachelor degree. That's already hard to explain to people, like, oh, are you still a community college? How are you offering a bachelor degree? Well, it's actually a world-class bachelor degree, state-of-the-art technology, awesome professors, awesome administrators, advisors, everything. But then to kind of, change the paradigm a little bit about community colleges offering bachelor degrees, that's a whole marketing campaign. So it took us a lot of marketing, taglines, print materials, above the line, below the line, every sort of marketing that you can imagine. And it actually took us a lot of talking to the families and parents and telling them more about what they can accomplish with a degree. Employability was the next thing, because we needed to make sure that what we promise people to admit them as continues to be feasible as they graduate and walk across the stage. So we wanted to reach out to industry leaders and tell them that Lone Star is currently offering this world-class bachelor degree in cybersecurity, and the students are capable of doing this. We invited them to join our advisory board so they can see us, meet with us, tell us what exactly they need. So industry input was tremendous for us while we were building the program, so we can provide what we promised and make sure that what industry has promised us to hire our students is still feasible. So we went to all the conferences that we could possibly attend. We talked on panels, we talked to people. We had the most FaceTime with industry to tell them about the program, the learning outcomes, and what students will be able to accomplish if they get hired. So all of these were things that we had to navigate, and I have to say they were not easy. But because everyone in this program is so passionate about the program, I don't think we had any trouble navigating those hardships. And we're here today with 300 students enrolled, 150 walked across the stage. I would say 65% of the people who graduated based on our survey either got a promotion, got another job in their field, or just a raise in salary, which is everything we wanted. So thank you so much for inviting us, and I'll pass the baton to Greg to tell us more about his experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great so far. I mean, coming into a program that was so new and so willing to empower me to let me make a lot of changes. We had, like she mentioned, we came out of the pandemic, and we had labs. The object when I came on board was, how do I take this industry experience I have, 35 years, and make it so it's not so just cut and dry? How do we make it real life? Like we talked about yesterday, just Chris and I, what do we do about the MGM attack that just happened? How can we pivot quickly? So believe it or not, our 3320 paper, which is our first intro class, at the end of the semester, their final paper is going to be on the MGM attack. Kind of 5 questions. What is social engineering? Because we know that they use social engineering in there. What is malware, and what's ransomware, and what was the impact both financially and you're looking at all the other implications to the guests. How was that impacted them? So we had that. So we pivoted, and so that's now our final paper for those students. So that's I think the key takeaway in this part of it is they gave us the power.
I must say that when we talked before, record this live session, when we prepared, I was surprised by the size of the college. It's I believe it's the second largest community college in North America. Is that correct?
That is correct. We are serving 85,000, 90,000 students.
Wow.
So
That's amazing. So how did it become? I mean, how was the college able to grow so much? How does the program mature within this very large organization?
So
We're
the
Texas.
90,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Everything's
exactly.
big in
Everything is
Texas.
big in Texas. But
it's in
just a
Texas.
small
Yeah,
correction. The 90,000 are not all in cybersecurity or even in the
of course.
bachelor's, but we have 70 plus degrees and certifications that we offer our students. So between the bachelor, the associates, and the AASs, the applied degrees, and the certificates, we have that number, the 90,000. The bachelor itself has 1,000 students, which think about 0 to 1,000 in 3 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Greg, let me ask you.
Right.
There were some key lessons learned here for the audience today, and one of them that was critical to your success was your ability to leverage adjunct professors and entice those from industry to be a part of your journey. And I didn't mention this, but Dalia, as I understand, you're responsible for partnerships as well for the college. But Greg, how did you find adjunct professors? How did you leverage them, and how do you keep them?
Dalia has been phenomenal at that. She's actually taught me a lot about how to reach out and grab professors here. So a good example was we're building a SOC, and we can talk about that a little bit further. But as we were going around, we went to University of Texas, San Antonio. We went to USAA. It's hard to get into USAA to see their SOC. However, one of our students works there. So they got us in there. And while we were giving there, one of the directors started talking to us, and he really gave us a phenomenal pitch. And Dalia reached out to him after the end of the class, at the end of the presentation, goes, "Hey, you should come teach with us." And I'm thinking, no way on earth are we going to get somebody of that caliber. They have millions of hits every day, do everything else. Not only did we get one, we got two of them from USAA. So, and I've been a USAA member 42 years. So I know how much work that they do in protecting USAA. It's banking, it's insurance, it's everything. So we added them to our list. So that was great. The social events that we go to a lot of conferences. We're heavily involved in that. I'm speaking in November at the oil and gas conference. So those connections that we make out in the industry have paid multipliers back to us in terms of being able to reach out to
Greg, if you were, I know that the audience, it's a good point, because it's very, everyone wants to hire folks from the industry. It's very difficult, and Chris will later on explain how he came on board from being a CISO. But if you were to give the audience like 2-3 tips on where they should hang out to locate that talent, you said conferences. What would be where were you most successful? Where did you go?
I would say, the conferences is probably the number one place we go to. The other part is we go to for training sessions. I went to Black Hat. We go to going to SANS. And so people in those particular programs are also learners. And that's one thing we want, is we want these lifelong learners who, I was management for a number of years. I'm kind of getting really back into the tech world. And those are the people we want. They can take, they're a CISO, they're still learning. Those are the type of people we want. The other part is, we do advertise online. So this probably the third part where we get a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, as a former CISO, and sounds like, that's a great catch for the organization. Yeah. And coming from the industry to education, it's an interesting move, and it sounds like the college was successful in recruiting you for that purpose. But what made you make the decision? What did they say that you said, well, I really want to also be an educator?
I blame Dalia, just like Greg described, how, was able to bring in people from USAA. Dalia dragged me in. I started out as an adjunct, and so I was doing a couple of classes for a couple of semester prior to this. And then it got to the point that, I needed to find a break. Cybersecurity, you get to the leadership roles and stuff like that. you run into a lot more stress, especially in smaller organizations where I was leading at. And so it was an opportunity for me now to kind of de-stress. But the other thing is I've always been one like Greg, get up on stage and do a presentation. Like later this year, I'll be in Miami at an industrial control system cybersecurity conference on a panel there, talking with other maritime industry, cyber, and physical security experts. So it's my time to sit there and be able to do this, and then also to plan ahead for the future. What are the things I could do? Well, maybe consulting, because I'm fortunate enough that Dalia and Greg and all that, they're like, yeah, you can have a side job, you could do consulting and those types of things. So we're moving ahead in that direction, and I love talking with students because you look at it and you're like, this is the next generation. These are the people that are going to be working while I'm retired, and they're going to make sure my USAA account is safe.
Think
in the
about
future,
to prepare the next generation and de-stress. There's 3
Exactly.
messages for those of you who are looking to recruit talented folks from the industry. Here's a couple of useful messages that you can use. The topic today is, we're going to talk about anything, but the theme is how to work on a budget, or how to maximize the value of a cybersecurity program on a budget. And I was very interested to hear about the SOC that you're launching. It sounds like that's part of the strategy, part of the vision. So I don't know who's the best person to talk about your security operations center and how is that working? What's the plan for that?
I'll go ahead and maybe kick it off, and then Dalia can maybe talk about some of the background in terms of how do we leverage it with the other teams. So, I mean, one of the things we wanted to bring is real world experience to our students. Going out with just a degree, that first employer is like, well, what have you done? They can talk about their labs, they can talk about that. But by sitting into a SOC, a live SOC, will give them that kind of experience that an industry leader, like let's say one of the big oil and gas companies will say, hey, he sat in a SOC, he understands what it is, he's used the tools in the SOC, hey, we want to give him a chance. And so we've started the SOC. It's going to go live in the fall, and it's a full-blown SOC. We've looked at some of the leading industries out there, Schlumberger and a bunch of others out there, to get an idea of how we want to develop it. So we're going to have that. We'll have 2 live Lone Star employees who are going to be really monitoring our cyber awareness and keeping track of all that stuff right next door, so that they can interact with them as we needed to. We've moved our classrooms up there as well, so we can have classes, and then we can use the SOC and kind of flip a switch, and we can go from live traffic to being able to do test traffic. So maybe we're talking about malware or something like that. We can take a sandboxed environment within that, put some malware into it, and let the students find it while they're sitting in the SOC. So those are the things we really, really wanted to do. And then trying to leverage it, the cost is always another piece. So I'll let Dalia talk about maybe the cost and how we did that.
Yep.
So the story started when our chancellor was visiting UTSA, and he took a tour of their SOC and came back with amazing insights about how important this is to a program like ours. We only know that 2, maybe 3 universities in the entire state of Texas have SOCs. So building the SOC was like a dream. But then it also helped us that when we surveyed our students the first time after they graduated, like the very first cohort, students were finding it a little difficult to prove professional experience in cybersecurity. So most of our students are working professionals, but they may not have 3 years work experience in cybersecurity before they finish the program. That's difficult. And that's a historical fact about job descriptions in cybersecurity. They usually require that 1 to 3 years of experience. So again, we wanted to change the paradigm. So we went out to industry, told them it's impossible. You can't have, if you have 4 million jobs to fill, you need to compromise a little bit. So 3 years, it's not going to happen. So maybe make it 1 year. And they were happy with 1 year, but we were back to the question, how do we have that 1 year? So the SOC solved that problem for us. It kind of what it was, the hidden X in the equation of how do we provide them with industry experience as they finished their degree strong. So we started thinking about the SOC. We had the project plan, and then we went and visited the other SOCs that we wanted to emulate. And well, it was a fruitful journey because on the way to the SOC, we also hired a bunch of faculty. So it was great. But we had the budget to build the SOC, but we didn't have since we're talking about, balancing cost and quality, we didn't have the budget for the software. So again, we went back and we thought outside the box a little bit. And then we figured out that either commercializing the SOC would be a solution. So it's not only for Lone Star and it's not only a mock SOC, but it's an actual full-fledged SOC. But we could also do something else, like partnering with another department that has an additional budget. And we did that. So we partnered with our IT department. So the SOC in the morning will be to really protect Lone Star from cyber vulnerabilities and do all the defense work that we need as a college. But then in the evenings, because all of our classes are evening classes, it will be an educational SOC. And that's the perfect balance to keep us afloat, find more budget, allow us to benefit from the SOC around the clock. So I think that's a perfect plan if other colleges are thinking of building a SOC.
That's an amazing tip, by the way. So basically, you're using it as a revenue center in a way, or to save budget, plus giving your students 1 year of operational experience. They're actually graduating with 1 year of experience, which is like a huge advantage over other students.
Mm-hmm.
Team, we started talking about one thing, which is getting the adjunct professors to get the real world experience. Leaders like Greg and Chris, you probably can't not leverage your industry experience with the stories, and you know what they need to know, what the students need to know to be work ready. Because you can ask yourself, would you hire them? And you've leveraged adjunct professors, but keeping adjunct professors, and what are the main reasons that you're able to keep them? But also, before you even attract them, what are the main reasons that you feel that they're hesitant to want to take on a teaching position?
So I want to jump on this one before we talk about how to keep them. I wanted to say, oh, sorry, it was Greg. Sorry, no,
Good.
sorry.
Go, Dalia, go for it. It's an interactive session.
No, I'm just too excited, I guess. I just wanted to say that sometimes if you're wanting to balance the academic qualifications and work experience and hire adjuncts, technically impossible. So you have to really find, what do you need more? We need more of the industry expertise and a person who knows who knows the industry, who have the expertise and experience, extensive, not normal experience. And so we started doing those crosswalks. So if we find an expert who we really like, but initially we wanted a PhD in cybersecurity. Apparently those PhDs did not even exist 10 years ago. So wanting a person with a PhD in cybersecurity and 20 years of industry experience is not going to happen. So focusing so much on this and leaving a position open for 2 years is not a good solution. So we started going back to crosswalks and trying to see the alignment between that industry experience with the actual academic experience that we originally wanted. And that kind of solved the problem for us, because if a person has a master's in business but has 25 years experience as a CISO, do we still want the PhD in cyber? No. But then the alignment and proving that for our accreditation purposes was the question. So we started doing the crosswalk and proving that with this level of experience, that person meets the requirements or meets the experience of a person with academic credentials. That kind of solved a huge problem for us. Sorry, Greg, just needed to say that.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. So what we discovered was a lot of times, a lot of the CISOs and everybody, when you look at the job description for a CISO, they want the certified CISO, they want a CISSP, they want a CISM. And we discovered that CISSP is kind of the equivalent almost of a PhD in our world for what we need to teach. So a CISSP crosswalk is almost a check mark. So if you got your CISSP and you're watching this and you want an academic and you live in Texas, contact me, contact Dalia. We'd be happy to bring you on.
You're developing students
and
with
that's
practical experience. You don't need PhDs with academic research. You need those with.
And I think that's what separates us, right? Is that we actually have actual industry experts coming in and teaching, right? It's not somebody that's just strictly academia focused. Sorry, Dalia, but strictly academia. They come in with real world expertise. I think the things that come out of my class and the students get out of my class the most is all the stories, all of the cyber attacks, all of the background that I bring into the class. Instead of just teaching to the PowerPoint, right? I'm throwing in all that expertise on top of it, and it's like Greg mentioned earlier, we threw MGM into the class mix this semester because it's the latest, greatest thing, and getting people to start thinking about it, and it's the same thing. When she asked me to become an adjunct, I'm like, well, I don't have a doctorate. I've got an MBA, and I've been, CISO for whatever, and I've been in industry for, 20 plus years. So, she's like, no, come on, I got to have you come teach and everything else. And it's the same thing we're looking at. And the other thing is, it's like, okay, what is the workload going to be for me as an adjunct professor? How much are you going to be putting on me? Right. And reality was, it's not that much of a workload. I mean, you sit there, the course is already developed. All you're doing is adding your flavor to it. You're, handling the, some papers or a paper per student per week. And then, or the lab that they do, making sure they complete the labs. So I think the adjuncts, we only have one class per semester, right? So, it's not a huge workload that's added onto it. And as Dalia, mentioned to me, it's like, getting an extra paycheck. It's like the ice cream, or not the ice cream, the frosting on the cake, right? It's just the extra bit. So you get, maybe you spend, 8 hours, 10 hours a week as an adjunct teaching, and all the stuff that goes with it. And, you get a nice little check every couple of weeks for that.
Chris, I hadn't thought about this question until now, but is it possible to say no to Dalia? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's possible. It's nice. She comes at you.
I tell you what, I've had to have my arm sewn on twice. She's twisted it off twice. So,
all right.
And even when I started my journey on this, I kind of took some, kind of retired, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my girlfriend was actually teaching at Lone Star English as a second language. She's the one to throw this, hey, so why don't you consider teaching? I'm like, maybe. And then Dalia's like, and so I apply for the job, and then Dalia's pinging me. She goes, why don't you want to be, why don't you start off as an adjunct? I'm like, nope, I'm coming in as full professor. I'm not coming in. And I think that's what actually got her. She goes, all right, that guy's got some confidence. We're going to take him. So it's one of the stories we tell. And the other thing I just want to piggyback what Chris said, the cool thing about our semesters is they're only 8 weeks long. So really they're very short. So we can actually squeeze 2 classes in the fall semester, 8 week 1, 8 week 2, as they call it. And so we tried to work with that. And one of the things we came up with, a lot of our students, as Dalia mentioned, have already maybe another degree. Let's say they had a degree in computer science, but they want the cybersecurity part. So we just added this semester, we're 5 weeks in, an accelerated cohort where you can double up on, because you don't need the English, you don't need the history, you already have that. So why can't you double up on the number of cybersecurity courses? And we're cohort basis. So now we have an accelerated one where they can do the kind of the 2-year part in 1 year, because they already have a degree already. So that's been helpful. That's still a transition, but we have 9 cohorts running simultaneously right now. So it's, when I think we're going to be adding more from the way we're going.
Great.
And Greg Lindstrom is soon to be Dr. Lindstrom. So although we hired him and he doesn't have the PhD in cyber, and we all agreed that he doesn't need it, he changed his mind, being so passionate about this program and so passionate about his students. And he decided to go and get his PhD. I don't know how he does that, but it's happening. And his great inspiration for all the students, because at least 2 of the students reached out to me and said, like, we don't know how soon to be Dr. Lindstrom does it, but we don't want to stop after the bachelor's. We really want to pursue master's. So it's a huge inspiration. Also, that we're hiring adjuncts with that level of industry experience. Bringing them to the classroom is not only that we're giving that experience right there, right then to the students, sharing all the best practices and all of that, but also making the connection. So our students finish the program with so many CISOs that they know already from class. And classes are 8 weeks sessions. So they, as they go to class, if they are taking the class hybrid or in person, it looks like it's an 8-week interview for them because they are spending that much time with an industry expert who can hire them eventually. So those people can actually be the hiring managers for our students as they graduate. So it's
graduating with experience and with a network, basically, in relationships.
Got it.
Great tip.
So we've established that it's impossible to say no to Dalia, but we've also established that Greg is not a carbon-based life form. So we're now. Well, we talked about the adjuncts to getting the alignment to real-world experience. The other thing is, Greg, as I came to know you, is what seems to be unique about Lone Star, and Dalia and Greg, if you could talk about this. It seems like, Greg, you have line of sight to the curriculum, you have line of sight, and you are a teacher, and you also the head of the department. That's pretty rare to have somebody with that kind of line of sight, but also span of control. So you could probably see what needs to be taught, how it gets taught, and who's teaching it. Do I understand that right? And how did you come to have that kind of structure?
I mean, I think Dalia can go more into it, but I think we started off with, like I said, we started off with one professor in this program. That was it. Then we added another really good adjunct, James Morrison. He's phenomenal. He's a retired FBI. He has 8 years of military. So when you get that kind of experience adding onto it, and he helped develop some of the later part of our program, the more advanced ones, the advanced hacking classes that we teach, the penetration testing. So we started adding all of those in, and then it's kind of like, where do we take it to the next level? And this is where I think our industry experiences come out. We start looking at the labs. Is this lab good enough? As we were talking with we have an advisory board with a dozen really high quality CISOs from around the country. And one of the things they advise us, like, hey, we need more Linux and we need more cloud. So by giving me the power, kind of as a chair and a lead, was I can make that pivot. I can make sure our what we call primary learning objectives and our student learning objectives all kind of match up there. And can we fit that in there? And then, of course, we also went to the board and said, hey, we want to add these as formal things we want to add to our program. So now we have in our database class, we kind of took it from MySQL. Now we do, Azure, we do Google, and we also added Linux because that's what industry wants. So that ability to pivot on the fly. And we did that in 1 semester. So it's huge. I mean, Dalia gives me guardrails. I don't know if you can see my thing, guardrails this big, and I can move within those guardrails, which is great.
And you might question how balances if Greg is the chair and he's the professor and he's the faculty and he's the lead and he's everything. But we do have checks and balances in place, because if industry tells us to change something, then it goes through Greg, and Greg decides it's great. Yes, we need to add this to make our students more employable. Between him thinking this and this getting implemented, it has to go through curriculum development. So it goes through a software that we use. It's called Koali. And then so the whole Koali process between his idea and moving the idea through all the different levels of shared governance, where everybody pitches in and says that if they yes, we love the idea, or no, that needs to change, goes back to Greg, and so on. So we still have a system of checks and balances in place. But like you said, he has that full line of sight. He isn't like, he basically has everything that has to do with the program from the time students are admitted, because he's also looking at admissions decisions with us, until the moment he shakes hands with the students as they cross the stage. So it's just phenomenal how we could do this without jeopardizing, checks and balances again, like I said.
Are the students afraid to actually shake his hand? I mean, as a jiu-jitsu instructor,
they're usually laughing, usually giving me a hard time. Because I mean, time you get done, you get to know these people. Chris and I were just talking about, and he's got a student from Germany in his class. I grew up in Germany. My girlfriend's lived there the last 25 years. So I'm like, all right, who's the student? Kind of. So you develop really close connections with them. Some of the students, I mean, one of them works for Disney as a software engineer. I'm teaching, software and databases. This guy's like, a guru. So it makes it challenging when you have students who are actually 2 or 3 times better in that particular area than you are. But it makes the class fun. He ended up being our graduation speaker at the end.
Oh,
So
wow.
we enjoyed it. He's also a veteran, so that was nice.
Right.
Awesome.
Greg, when talking about budget, one of the things you mentioned to us was your relationship with the ISSA chapters. And can you teach the audience a little bit on how you leverage ISSA?
Actually, I just turned that over to Chris, so I'll let Chris jump on that. How's that?
Yeah. Chris,
So ISSA, and then even local industry, because Dalia was really fundamental here recently in getting one of the local industries and ISACA to offer up scholarships and stuff like that. But that reach out allows us to sit there and help push the students out. Right. A lot of times you get the students, they're just kind of in their own world. They're thinking about, okay, I got to go to work. I got class later. And that's all they do. Well, like today, right now, because, the 3 of us would probably be at the ISSA event that's going on right now. But we're here with you. So we sacrifice. But so today's, and we get them out, we get them free access to these conferences, we give them free access to the ISSA chapter meetings, so that they can get out and start networking and getting to know the industry better. The big thing about information security and cybersecurity is it's a lot about who you know, especially when it comes to finding the jobs, right? And so if you get out, you get the students start getting out, start networking. They've already developed some of these relationships, and especially the ISSA chapter here in South Texas is phenomenally busy. They're always doing something, and so always a great opportunity to get out, meet people. And then same time gets us a chance to get out and meet the leaders that come to visit. And then, Dalia recruiting, Greg, recruiting,
So you're basically, you build the relationship. So you're actually getting your students into ISSA chapter meetings so they can hear, interact, start building their network and be involved with the community, which is something that everyone in the audience can do. So everyone has their own local ISSA chapter. These are very, very local. So you're working with ISSA and ISACA. Are you also working with the Cloud Security Alliance, by the way, or not yet?
OWASP. Yeah,
OWASP.
we just started. Yep, we got OWASP chapter here that we started promoting people out to to join. So yeah.
And you're also using it to engage with mentors. I think you've mentioned that as well, not just to put in the students, but also to get mentors.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the things I am currently working on is trying to recruit students that we could connect with mentors. ISSA has a very good mentor program, and it ties them up with an industry expert for a little while, and they have their touch points where they meet and they have conversations. And actually, in some cases, I believe some of them actually end up being hired by some of the people that are mentors. So it's a really good opportunity for these students to get involved and again get to knowing people in industry.
Yeah, we actually had 10 mentors last time, which was really great.
Wow.
I know one of my students, he would stay with me after class. He said, "Hey, we're actually reviewing a cybersecurity policy for a company. What do you think about this ideas?" And so we'd stay after class and kind of bounce around what he was working on. And of course, next semester I had him again. And what's the class? It's on policy. He says, "Well, do you think I could turn part of that in?" I said, "Well, you can't turn in somebody else's company. However, you can do kind of the pieces you developed, and you can submit those as good work." And so, of course, naturally, he got an A because he spent an incredible amount of time working on that over the time he was with his mentor, which was great. And I've talked to his mentor since then, and he's, he really loves him. So it's a good win-win.
I wanted to ask, and if there's any you want to ask, of course, feel free to interrupt. But I wanted to ask about your labs. You've mentioned, obviously, you're working with Cyberbit. That's how we know you. But you're leveraging hands-on labs as part of your program. So I don't know who wants to take that, but how are you doing that? And I know you're also optimizing between different types. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's helping you in the program?
I'll kick it off and I'll pass it over to Chris and see if he's got some more info on there. Yeah, I mean, we try to do, I mean, like in the intro class, one of the things I was working on last night, and in fact, actually, I got in trouble because I didn't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning, was kind of how do we want to have the students map out maybe their own home network? Can they look at, start off with a map of tell me all the devices you think are inside of your network, at home. And you start off with the usual laptops, maybe the iPhone, et cetera. They're not thinking that their TV is a device, their Apple Watch is a device, their iPads, and it's amazing how many things can come up. And then using the tools, whether it's Wireshark, doing a TCP dump, WinDump, using ZenMap. I actually had some unusual activity when I was actually mapping out the program, the project I want to do for the students. I had some unusual activity. I'm like, And then I'm thinking, okay, how can I introduce this to the students? So we take that kind of world. Also, if you look in here, you start getting the ICS. I got a PLC controller. So when I went down there, so this one's actually kind of cool. They actually smaller versions.
Now we see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually in your coffee pot. So I use this for ICS exploitation. Actually connected it kind of to a mixer with some and actually was able to burn out the mixer just using these type of tools. And these are the things are low cost. I can show my students, really show them how to do into that OT ICS world that I don't think a lot of community colleges or even universities really get into that kind of a world. Most of us on this call here come from that world. And so while we may not have the deep ICS expertise, we know enough about it to teach the students. And that's what we want to impart because we want to get that next generation there. As you mentioned, we also use other CyberBit's fantastic. Most of our senior level students are CyberBit, but we also have another one we use for, we do kind of Linux training on there, some of the Security Plus training. And we have, usually 8 labs, per semester that these students can actually kick off. So every week, last week was malware. This week is on encryption. So we try to keep that up. And then we also, every time you guys are coming out with ones, you guys have all kinds of spotlights. Those are great. We can show our students, hey, here's some new things out there. They're 5 minutes long. They work wonderful as a teaching aid. So we try to max your program out as much as we can. And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about Microsoft Azure or any of those other ones, or.
Yeah, I mean, so for my experience, last semester I taught Python, right? And the Python examples, pretty generic, running database stuff like that. But now this day and age, cyber uses Python a lot, and it's a lot about reaching out and touching APIs on the internet and everything else, and showing students how APIs work and the communication and pulling data, bringing it back into Python and parsing it out. We used a free API out there for Star Wars, which was kind of cool because then we were able to look up all the different characters in Star Wars and get all the birth dates, what their home planets were, and all this other stuff that was, and then pivoting and say, okay, well, let's learn more about Tatooine and the different planets and stuff like that. And so, it's using the real world, using the labs that are there to really, it just kind of blows the mind of the students sometimes. Yeah. As Greg was saying, last week was malware. People were like, our students were like actually creating malware and deploying it to a virtual system. And they're like, oh, it's a keylogger. And I'm like, oh, wow, it really works like that, So now they got to see firsthand, how simple it is to get infected.
We're starting to get some questions popping in. I also have some that I'm getting. And one thing just popped up right now from Joe, which is, and I don't know, who of you wants to take it, but how do you manage your new students, onboarding, setting up a program? How do you keep up with the onboarding process of new, Joe is saying trainees, so I don't know if you want to call them trainees, but new students. Well, is there an onboarding process for students? I mean, they're students, so orientation maybe? Yeah. Can you cover that?
So we have a new student orientation for all of our bachelor programs together. So we have one big session where they get to meet their professors, they get to meet the student services team, including advisors, admissions people. We have a presentation from financial aid, and we have a presentation from the person behind the LMS that we use. So we use D2L, Start to Learn, and we make sure to have a while most of our students had experience with Desire to Learn before, but just in case they are coming from another institution that used something else, we have people also to explain like how do they log in, what do they need to do the first time they log in, and things like that. We also have an online, like a short online orientation specifically for online students. So that's for everyone, online and hybrid. But specifically for online students, we want to make sure that they understand how to log in, what's required, how to post, making sure that they meet the deadline, making sure they have proper connections. And if they don't have a laptop, Lone Star would give them a laptop or an iPad, whichever they use. So they just need to put in a ticket and they come here to campus and they get it and they return it before they graduate.
Great. So Joe, I hope that answers your question. If you want to go turn on your microphone and ask anything else, just let us know. Thanks for that. Adam, anything else? Oh, there is maybe there's another question. Yeah. Do you use the LMS for all? It says for all Cyberbits training, but that's I guess that's more of a question to Cyberbits, so we can answer that in a separate thread. But there's a very specific question on integrating LMS with the platform. So from my perspective, I can answer that yes, there is an integration between Cyberbit and LMS platforms. So whether you're using Blackboard or D2L or others, there's an LPI API interface, and basically the platform is integrated with LMS. But that's a very specific kind of product question. So let's get back to other questions, whatever is interesting for the rest of the audience. Adam, anything else from your end in the meanwhile?
Thanks, Ron. A couple of questions, team, and that is about the structure of your program. You have a lot of online. You had a lot of those that come to the campus. It's a beautiful campus. I have a lot of family in Houston. Can't wait to get down there and tour your campus at some time. But the structure of your program for cost efficiency is leveraging online, offline adjuncts, being efficient with your finances. And that was part of our theme here today. Can you help the audience understand how do you balance when they're online versus offline, they're adult learners, and how that helps your cost structure?
I'll just start technically and I'll let Dalia answer maybe the cost part of it. But in terms of, because I guess one of the things when the pandemic happened was being able to switching to the online lab. So even our in-person classes, we have at the end of it, they can actually get on there. We have computers at all their desks, so they can actually do the same labs as the students at home. So there's no difference on that. I think the benefit of the online is you have that more personality. It's a little more interactive, and I personally enjoy the online programs more. But you are right. We do have a 50-50 mixture, which does help. I think this is also going to help when we have the SOC, because we'll be able to take the people who are online, and let's say we have 30-minute blocks. We still got to work out the exact detail, but you can come in there and sit in the SOC 30 minutes at a time, while, on your off hours. So let's say you're working, you have some time on Thursday evening, and you don't have a class. You can come into the SOC and sit there on Thursday evening and actually do some training. So we tried to have the online people come in with their SOC.
Dalia, anything to add?
I mean, so Lone Star has state-of-the-art facilities, so we can't be 100% online because, part of the college experience is the campus experience. A lot of students actually use campuses as deciding factors when they decide between whether I go here or I go there. So we have like some of the most amazing campuses, I would say, in the nation or in the world. I can actually switch cameras and show you the view from my office if I would. No, I couldn't, but it's okay. But it's like a lot of greenery, perfect landscaping, amazing buildings, state-of-the-art labs. So we really don't intend to move completely like online. We try to leave it 50-50 because we also want to be flexible and be cognizant to people's work schedules. But we also offer weekend classes. We offer evening classes, plus the online option, of course. But some people would be more interested in hybrid because it captures the best of both worlds. They are on campus, they enjoy the facilities, but they also get to work online some. So do the assignments and projects online and so on. I mean,
no substitute for face-to-face, is there?
Yeah,
so
no.
The reality to this world you have to offer online too.
Right. Some people are more in-person learners, like they really appreciate the connection and networking with other students, because you never know, like you graduate and those people are hiring managers at some company that you're interested in. So they really want to build that strong network, and they really like looking at the professor, being able to see like all his, like talk to him real time, see his face, be able to talk to him after class. It's a different experience that some people still appreciate over online.
Awesome. And I hope others ask questions as well. It's a rare opportunity to have leadership like Chris, Greg, and Dalia on the line together. So please, people, drop your questions in or open your mic and go for it. But Joe has asked another question here, really important one, like help getting students into the labs for training versus online training. Can you give them suggestions or ideas to getting more foot traffic for your on-prem range?
Like I said, it's for us, we mostly switched over to online just because it was cost efficient. And like I said, it gives everybody the balance. The only things we have inside the classrooms are more hands-on, so we can take this PLC and I can show them how it all works and stuff like that. However, all the students are going to take the same labs via online. They could be in the classroom and taking it, but they're signing on the CyberBit. They're taking that lab through CyberBit. So that's kind of there. We also allow them, of course, on their own PCs. We try to use the ethics and stuff. If you're going to scan a network, make sure it's your home network. Don't do it at work. Don't do it at school. Try to teach them what they can do with Wireshark, what they can do with Nmap, what they should not do with those things. But we have them do it on either the Lone Star PC that we give them or on their own personal devices. We're going to start adding in a lot more of VMs, especially for things like control things. That's free software you can do the IT OCS type work in. They actually have PCAP files that you can use with Wireshark with some ICS type traffic that they can detect. So moving them towards more VM is kind of the next phase that I want to get to. So we can actually, really have some cool sandboxes they can play with.
Yeah.
Sounds like reading the messages.
Sure.
The challenge is to get, I guess what I'm hearing is to get people on site. So remote is okay, but we want to get people actually in person. I think, by the way, one thing that we see, and it sounds like you're also a CyberBit customer, and one thing that we're seeing across institutions that are successful in getting people also to come on site is competitions, and competitions can be on site, so you can decide where you're doing them. So one of the nice engagement tools that we're seeing is competitions that are between institutions. Of course, we're doing that a lot, but also in the institution, just to run an internal contest or challenge, and you can decide that this is only on site. So you can basically have it as an on-site initiative. It's not available remotely, but only on site. Another thing that I can suggest to get folks into the room is to do team exercises. So to run in a simulated incident response and emulate a SOC. So basically people sitting around the table, connecting to the range and running an incident together, a simple live fire exercise, and just do it as a team and practice the teamwork. And that gets people into the room. The interaction is really fun.
That's exactly what we're doing when we're building out our SOC. We've set up an incident response room, set off to the side of the SOC. The other thing Greg's been trying to do has been trying to get those industrial control system devices, building a wall within our learning environment that has all these industrial control systems on there, that you have to be present in the facility to actually be able to touch and see. So those are the types of things that, as Dalia says, this is a hybrid environment. as far as training. So maybe some point in time, they're going to have to come in to the SOC to actually sit in the seat and be participating or doing an incident response drill or something like that.
Apologize for having to step away for a second. I forgot to plug my laptop in. Typical things.
Oh.
It was ready to die. Yeah, but in our in-person classes, that we probably have about average of 20 students, 22 per class. Online usually about 30. So it's a little bit of an offset there, but however, there's still 20, 22 students who want to be in there in-person learning. So that's always helpful. I think every one of them that's in there, I think they enjoy the classes more than the online. But you're right. It's kind of where we have to, I think, do maybe a better job educating some of the incoming people to try to get into our class. In this case, we're kind of on the west side of town. We teach in what's called Westway, which is where the old Cyrus One data center was. I think it's Data Tech is their name on it. So as they're driving to our campus, you're actually going by some of the largest data centers in the country. So that's kind of hey, these are places you can do that. I actually do in the first class, I kind of say, hey, the building you just went by, here's what they do inside. And most of us came from data center environments at some point in our career. I was under the floor running cables, So I try to explain that to these guys, everything that happens in there. And the other thing we discovered too is a lot of, and Chris was actually done a really good job on this, was the students they hear the SOC, they want to be SOC analysts, but they don't realize all the different jobs that are out there for cybersecurity. So, he's doing a great job. I'll let you talk about that, Chris, since that was some good ideas you came up with.
So what I do at the beginning of every class, I find a YouTube video that discusses different portion of cybersecurity. This past week was basically what a security analyst does, and a 10-minute video, produced on YouTube about what somebody does as a cybersecurity analyst. The week before was about red teaming. What does a red team person do? Because a lot of these kids, some of them are like, oh, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna do nothing but red teaming, but you got some of them that want to do nothing but be like GRC or risk analyst, right? So, giving them an exposure of what, from people that are out there and being able to sit there and understand what's happening in cybersecurity is just not red team. It's just not security operations center analyst. There's other pieces that they can all be part of. Cloud engineering, that's going to be my next week's, topic video. I'm going to say, okay, cloud security engineering, what does it take? Industrial control systems is going to be another one. And, we got Schneider Electric. It happens to be our neighbor there in Westway too. Another big ICS PLC company. So, that's, trying to get people in, maybe I can find somebody over there at Schneider Electric to come in and talk about an ICS PLC and the security and all that other stuff. So that's kind of things that we try to do. And that's the other thing is we get industry experts. It's, give them in class. Sometimes I can only get a person to come to one of my classes. I teach 3 classes. I might only be able to get them to one. And I try to get them to the in-person one, because then they get the feel for what the students are really loving and feeling, and they energize. And then, of course, I record that and I play it back for the students later for the other 2 classes that are not in person. So, it's good stuff like that. Just getting them all energized. I think that's how we're going to keep people coming to our school.
I think it's also important in these days to acknowledge that there is a paradigm about where are these students really going to go work. And many of them are going to go to work for a virtual environment. I have 8 part-time people on my cybersecurity team across 5 countries. We only come together physically once or twice a year. And so we've had to adapt our culture and our communication patterns, the clarity of our written thought. And we even have a couple that are, as they say, on the spectrum. They're actually really good. But we've had to change our communication, our culture a bit to adapt to that. I think that's part of what your program is, in a sense, forcing as well.
Yeah. And I just want to step back. No, go ahead.
As you got to work in both environments.
Right. One of the things you mentioned earlier was things like capture the flag. And that's one of the challenges we brought up to the advisory board just this last week. And so we get them in the room. It's like, hey, how do we do this? You have a capture the flag, you got maybe 3 students in or something like that, which is a challenge. But then we discovered that they work with University of Houston, they work with other universities, and they're having the same challenges. So the challenge they put back on us is, why don't we team up with all the universities in Houston and kind of create that club, that capture the flag event? And as you mentioned, within inter-university, to rather than you've got 3 in here, maybe you got 20 people then. It's better than having 3. So that's one of the next takeaways that was only 2 weeks ago that we had that conversation. So that's one of the things I'll be working on is meeting up with the other universities and seeing if we can be a little more collaborative on that. And competition is always great. Students love to be able to battle.
Yeah, I can say I second that.
Good for their resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
We run a competition in our academy in Atlanta. We run it where we compete against those companies.
It's
so the
highly
companies get to see
recommended.
what the students do.
It's highly recommended. And again, whoever's the customer, we help actually create those formats for you to get that engagement. So definitely a conversation to have if you're a cyber customer. But it sounds like this hour passed very quickly. I didn't realize that we were already past the hour. So I'd like to, I'm sure some of the audience have more questions, so you can still reconnect with us, respond to us by email or connect directly with the hosts on LinkedIn or ask for introductions from us, and we will help if you have more questions. And I really want to thank everyone, Adam, of course, as always, Dalia, Greg, and
Thank
Chris.
you guys so much.
It was a real pleasure. I learned a lot, really impressed by you. You're doing much more than a cybersecurity program. It is really like an all aspect initiative, networking, relationships, hands-on experience. So it was very interesting. I'm really learning a lot in these episodes. And to the audience, you will find Cyber Sensei on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or YouTube page. We will send a link to you over email with the recording as soon as it is available on all those channels. So don't worry, you will find it, and keep following, and of course register to our upcoming episodes and follow us on LinkedIn to get those updates. It was a pleasure, and thank you, and looking forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you very much.